Hey, this is Arsenic from Rambling Rican. This is part 2 of 3. Yeah, I think I did the math right. So, either way, this was one long 90-minute video that I actually recorded and had problems rendering, and I just took the opportunity to just break them up into 3 videos. So, let me know as to what you find interesting, and I'll get a better idea on how to work on day 2. I already have a general idea, but if any feedback would be greatly appreciated, and I'll consider it, and we'll go from there. So anyway, without further ado, this is midstream of a 90-minute video. This is part 2. I'm happy that it happened. So even if some of that doesn't show up on TV, for the people involved, like the All-Stars, they know. And I had plenty of times to tell them all the little stories of, y'all giving inspiration and, how people would stay up to watch the show, especially because of the different time frames. They're like, guys, you get up like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. It's like, yeah, if you're like, Pacific Coast, you're up at 1 o'clock in the morning. What are you talking about? They're like, to watch a TV show? And it's like, yes, to watch you guys on TV. He's like, oh man, how can you compete with that? Of course, Akiyama sitting there is like, yeah, by the time I ended up, I was way too early. Like all of the, I guess the quote unquote, was it fringe benefits of being a celebrity in this show, that didn't exist when he was around. Like it wasn't. It was way too new. It wasn't anywhere near international. In fact, they didn't even get international until, oh God, Sasuke 17, 18? So that was way past. I mean, he wasn't retired at that point, but it was far along that he didn't have that kind of reception that someone like Nagano has, or even Yuji for that matter. Yuji's a separate issue. I felt bad because I felt as if he was kind of straddling both worlds, because he's a huge All-Star fan, but he's also a new star, and even within age, he's what, 6 years younger than I am. So it's sort of like this mix. Like he wishes he could be part of that All-Star era, but he's not one. And it's not because he doesn't have the title. It's just he doesn't fit what the old guard used to be. He grew up with this show, so he's part of the new guard, and that's its own thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just he never really caught on like most people do. So I'm curious how Morimoto's going to be, because Morimoto is a veteran. He's been at this since he was 14 years old. For 13, 14? I think 14. Y'all can tell me in the comments how old he was. But it was actually pretty interesting, especially when the weather started to go south and everybody's like all freaking out. Some people are upset, and production, of course, their hair was on fire. God bless them. I felt horrible for them because nobody wants that kind of production, and they were already way in over their heads. This is not the same crew. At least the construction crew, not the same ones that normally do the tournament. And then, of course, everything's like falling apart. So Shinko's like, oh, this isn't Sasuke 8, so we're good. And, everybody in that group has been around since that point. And they're like, oh God, don't bring up that tournament. They had to compete in sideways rain. I mean, and not just even the final, like everybody. That was like all rain every day. Like, holy Moses. And they only had one day to record that. This, at least, they had the luxury of having the lot for 2 straight days before they had to dismantle on the 3rd. And so it was, they were just so chill. And Shingo was funny because he's like totally chill, like, this is nothing. Yamato was not happy about it. He's like, back in my day, we would have done this with pouring rain. And you know what? He's absolutely right. One of the rare times I actually agree with him. He was a bit more vocal on that, but that's his own thing. But again, nobody can argue with him because yes, they have done this and worse. now with health and safety all freaking out and whatever, it's like, yeah, we may want to consider. I kind of wish it just outright rained, because there was a point, and I might as well just start going into it. I missed the first 50 because security was different. I mentioned this before. Security was much different this year. And I think the bigger issue is this. This is only the second year that they actually have an audience. And again, comparing to American Ninja Warrior has a huge bleacher section, even in regionals, that is controlled by, was it on camera something. It's an actual, like you can register to get tickets. It's open tickets. Now, granted, it's still a closed set, but you can still get tickets online or even just show up, be part of, the family or whatever. That doesn't exist in Sasuke, and it never has. So last year was the first time I took one of my ideas of at least having a controlled group. Someone that is not a family member of someone that is competing. Because that's basically all that was there before. It's whoever's competing and their support group. And that was it for 18 years, 17 years. And then finally they're like, well, what do we... So they ended up coming up with their own thing where they did a lottery. And the lottery was a set amount of people. And I'm kind of happy that it happened, because when they put the application up for that, they actually tell you the actual physical date and time the Sasuke's taping. So I no longer have to get yelled at going, wait, you told people. It's like, no, it's on your freaking application and people can read it. The way it works is the day is they have 2 days that are recorded, and generally you have the first and second stage on the first day, and then the third and the fourth the next day. And so when you apply for these lottery tickets in Japan, you're put in the pool, and then they call you, like, I think somebody said it was like 2 days before that yes, you're allowed to be on there. But you're told, first you have to apply by slots. So for the first stage, 1 through 50, or I think probably 1 through 49, because 50 they start changing things, and then 50 through 100, and then the second stage, and then the third stage, and the fourth stage, and each of them has their own lottery group. So I showed them walking over and getting them organized and whatever. So last year, because it was the first time they'd ever done it, it was like herding cats, and everybody was like one big group, and they couldn't tell exactly who was part of the lottery group, because the lottery group had the second grandstand, and they stayed there for the entire duration. So it would be, if they were part of 1 through 49 or 1 through 50 or whatever it is, the first half, they stay there. They're not allowed to go anywhere. And it kind of benefits them to not go anywhere, because you're only there for that time. Then after that, you go home. Like, you're kicked out. So the second bleachers are the ones that have always existed, and that is rotated by number. So before, because there were only a smaller amount of people, they had a lot more leeway on when you can sit. In fact, last year I sat in the bleachers, I think it was like the first 20, 1 through like 25-ish. Then I was there in the low 30s up to like the 40 something. Then I went back, in the 60s, and then I did up to Jean's run, which was I think 75. It's the same as this year. And then after that I was kicked out. I wasn't allowed to go at any point, and I couldn't see anything past that. But they need to do that because those grandstands only hold a certain amount of people, and those people should be the ones of the people that are competing. So like in my case, once I was out, then the people from 76 through 100 can actually rotate onto those seats. It's just not enough space. Again, it's not like A&W where they have multiple seats to go through. There's only 2 grandstands, and technically only 1 because the other one is the lottery. So this time around, they're like, okay, we learned what happened last year. We're going to try to do it different this year. So what they did was, outside of, making sure that you show some picture ID to prove that you are on the list, because that was new this year. but they had the number of the person you are cheering on physically written onto your badge. And so, and then the badges, I already explained that earlier. So mine was 70. I was under Perry's this year. And so I technically could have been there as early as 60 and as late as 80, technically. But generally, it's up to your competitor, and then you're kind of out. So I didn't even bother before 50, and which was fine because what I just mentioned earlier, I spent the entire time with the All-Stars. And by the time we got to the women, I was hoping to see if I can get into the 50s group. So luckily I was with Grace, and I'm glad because again I knew that I could have been turned away, but I guess because I was with that group anyway, you know, I was with both Mika and Grace the whole time. So when I went over and I looked over at the what I call the mall cop, but you know, the specific security that was hired, because that's its own firm. The security firm is not at all tied to TBS or anybody else. So they have that team. So they look down and look at my number, and then he just looked up at me. Everybody's like waiting because like I didn't want to try to blow him off because that's just rude, and they'd be more embarrassing if somebody's chasing me down, because they probably would have. I've seen them do it with other people, like no, and they try to stop them. I didn't want to go through the embarrassment. And I was like, look, I can always go in a little bit later. I'll, you know, good luck, Grace, you know, that's a, but he allowed me through. He just, the way he did it is sort of like, he kind of looked off in the distance and we just kind of walked. Just like, okay, he didn't say anything, we're good. Because I showed him, mine was 70 and we were not in the 70. And so I'm like, okay, let me just kind of stay low. And then I still had to go through the second set of security because it's the first one just to even get past, they put a gate where the final stage was, because last year I took pictures underneath it. that was all cordoned off. You couldn't even get near it. So they had that entire section cut off, and then they had a very narrow area that you walk across. They actually put some things on the ground so people won't be walking on basically mud. And so we walked on that, and then you still had to get through the opening where the start line is, and that first bleacher where I would be sitting. And so they see me and they see Grace and they see Mika, and they're like, okay, because at that point luckily there were people that were rotated out, so I was able to sit there. So I'm like, okay, I am staying here until Jean's run. I am not moving. Which was good because it ended up being a great group. And you know, I go into the video with Grace about, you know, my experience with the girl groups and the things that frustrated me, that because none of that was on TV. And you got to see Casey's run, but that was a Navi, and Navi was shown in the middle of the night and only in the Tokyo region, so the rest of Japan didn't get to see it. Now, I would suspect now with Comcast going back into Ninja Warrior that it will eventually end up in Ninja Warrior again, just like what it used to be, where they would take out Olivia Munn and Kevin Pereira, that they actually put that back into the broadcast because it was for a domestic audience. I'm curious. I would assume that they would do that. I don't know if they'll do that with Grace's run, or Jean's or Perry's. I have no idea. But either way, I was a little upset with that, but I'm happy I got to see it in person, and it was interesting. The vibe again was very different. It was even from last year. It was very, very different, and I think again I chalked it up to everybody is stressed. We're at this point 5 hours behind schedule. Heck, I went to look at Inui, and I tried ignoring him as much as possible because he has his hair on fire. There was a one point where we kind of walked past each other, and I'm like, how are you doing? And yes, he understands English. And I said, how are you doing? He goes, eh. I'm like, good luck. He goes, gonna need it. And then he leaves. And I just left him alone because, again, he's the director. And so all those fires, he had to just, you can see it in everybody's eyes, and Fullcom's eyes, that all those guys were so stressed. The one guy in the front, I knew he did some mistakes and some that caused issues, but again, I try to give those guys slack, because that is probably one of the hardest jobs. You're trying to run this, you're 5 hours behind schedule, it's everything is starting to get like soppy and wet, but it's not quite raining. I just wished it rained, because there's rain that is falling from the sky, we can stop this. But the first day it never did. So I'm sitting in the before I even get to that, and I have mentioned this in other videos and like podcasts and stuff like that, but it fits in here. Before we went in, again, we hung around on the outside, trying not to kind of get in people's way. But I was with Nagano, Akiyama, Takeda, and Shingo for a long time. We're like in the middle of the afternoon. Usually at this point, they'd already be like pulled in to have like the audience shots and whatever, but they were not that far ahead. So we just kind of chilled and whatever, and getting something to eat and talking, and it was a fantastic time. And then at one point, one of the production crew like, dude, we haven't even gotten your picture yet. The sun is going down. Let's just get this done. So Nagano's like, the show must go on. It was just so funny. So they go over, and they get the little mugshot, and the mugshot is used for the online list of the competitors. So you'll have number 98, number 99, number 100, and then they have a picture of what they look like and kanji. So even if somebody can't read kanji, you know what the person looks like. So they started off with Takeda, and Takeda had the normal like, I can't even describe it. Here I am trying to do the face, and this is all audio. Yeah, this is great. But, like the normal, like, look, right? And so, I don't know what possessed me. I think it's probably because I do this with Yuji all the time, where it's like, you have a beautiful smile. Now, in Takeda's case, he does have a beautiful smile. He has shark teeth, but he still has a really nice smile. He looks much better when he's smiling. I think everybody looks better when they're smiling. They're more relaxed. So I put my fingers up along the side of the corner of my mouth and tried to simulate, because I didn't remember what the Japanese word for smile is. And so he looks up, because so he's facing the camera dude. I'm behind the camera, behind the cordon off area. And then he looks at me, and I'm like, smile, smile. And then so he starts cracking up. Like, just whatever it was, he thought it was funny. So instead of smiling, he's outright laughing. So Shingo starts crying. So I don't know if there was like something else that was going on, or I just looked like a stupid idiot. Probably the stupid idiot part. But I got him to start cracking up. Dude turned around, the camera dude turned around, and he goes, "Damena!" Like, stop it. And so I'm like, sumimasen. And so, Takeda's like waving, like trying to calm himself from laughing, and then so he does like the which I thought was perfect. He had like the total Kaki Takeda smile, like the the grin. And so all of a sudden I feel a tap on my arm, like like when somebody's trying to get your attention and they just kind of tap your arm. And it goes, and then you have, and now I'm gonna go mite, like, look, I think it's mite, M-I-T-E. That's what I remember. I don't know if that was the exact words. It's a bit of look. So he goes over to because there's like a pole separating, and so he crosses over the pole. He's gonna go next, and then so just as the guy is about to take the photo, he pulls out this huge yawn. And then I didn't say anything. Guy just turned around and looks at me, and I have my hands in the air like, I didn't do that. Shingo is crying. He was laughing so hard. And then so all of a sudden the guy starts yelling, "Can you guys just stop it? Damn it!" It's like he's like pointing at his watch like, let's go, let's do this. Like, okay. So I'm like, Yube's standing next to me. He's laughing. And so we're like trying to stifle laughter. It was the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. Everybody else is now like interested in what's going on because they're like, what the hell is all this? Like people getting yelled at, you know. And then so they get to Shingo and the guy's like pointing at him like, don't you dare. And so he just had like the normal smile, and then so at the picture's done and the guy's like booking, like he's gone. And then everybody else is like sitting there laughing. So I said, Nagano, I said, do the yawn again. And then he points at my phone. This is a phone. Because everybody calls it, it's like iPhone. And it's like, okay, so iPhone. And then he does the big yawn. So the photo that you see there, that is what that's what he did. I just thought that was hilarious. It was just so cool. By that point, Bunpei showed up a little bit later out of all of them. But by that point, everybody was just like kind of like hanging around and like, you guys are great. It's like, are you gonna take this seriously? And I was like, dude, am I running probably at midnight today? There's still plenty of time. I gotta find. It's like I am falling asleep. I had because he had flown in like the day before. And so, he has jet lag. And so he's like, oh God. So we finally sit down. I see the normal runs. I still wish Perry's run was in there. I mean, they already showed 2 injuries. They could have shown that one. That was an epic. I guess it almost reminds me of actually no, because even when Drew broke his ankle, he didn't get past the wall. This one was a little bit different, obviously, but Perry ended up all the way like within 3 feet from the end. And I still think if now granted he had a broken ankle, so he had quite an excuse for having to do the warp wall twice. But if he passed it the first time, he would have cleared the first stage. He probably had the same thing that dude from last year, forget what his name was, where last year or the year before, where he tweaked this. It was the year before 30. Where he hurt his neck and then he had to get basically a doctor stop. The doctor told him to not further injure himself. But he would have at least had I cleared the first stage. But it was still like, dude, doing a broken ankle. I mean, how epic is that? And it was just, Gene's run was one of the ones where it was an unfortunate thing. Because his best friend ran ahead of him and he fell. And I don't know about you guys, but if your dearest friend, he'd never run before, this is finally his opportunity to run, and then here you are gonna run, like he was emotional. So Gene started crying, and all of a sudden production's like, okay, just shake it off, let's go. And it's like, dude, like, he's still in the water. Can I grieve for a second? Just give me a second. And it just kept just put him in a foul, and he ended up failing in the exact same spot. And it's just, those were like certain mistakes, because there were points where you had almost an entire half hour between runs, and then like in this group, like they just tried to ram them as fast as possible, and it felt like an assembly line. And it was just, so that's about the only thing that I felt a little upset about. However, I understood why that happened. There were 5 hours behind schedule and no end in sight. You had no idea what was happening. And then everything started getting really, it was just, everything was moist. So fast forward to, after, Gene's run, I ended up leaving, back. Of course, Nagano was like sitting in the same seat. It was like, do I have to go in there? So it's like, can I just sit here for a while? And then of course they got pulled over, and then he had to do that. They ended up getting Yamada as well. Yamada was not having a good day because his guys were failing, and it was just, it was pretty bad. One of the rare times I actually felt bad for the guy, but it just, lots of things were said, let's just say. But again, when you see something like that happening, you see the circumstances, you completely understand they're behind schedule, the weather is not cooperating, the obstacles aren't cooperating, the stress level's gonna go high. You know that. So there's no point in complaining about something like that. So we just kind of chalked it up and spend time with our friends and try to make it, good of a good bad situation. So I ended up leaving, basically back to the same area, which is just outside of, like, I can still see the monitor. I think I took a picture. Yeah, you can still see the only monitor. I wish there were two of them, but it's expensive to do that. So I can still see who was running and whatever. And this was the high 70s, low 80s. But there was so much break between them, it really didn't matter. So at that point, that's when I was talking to people like Tomo and Shinya and just because we're looking around like, this is unusual. And especially the new group, they haven't dealt with that before because they didn't have it wasn't as delayed in any other time. This was a unique tournament, so each of them dealt with them a little bit differently. You can tell some of the stress, and I'm like, Tomo, how you doing? He goes, shaking his head like, no, and then he points to his stomach like it's a knot. So I'm like, that Shibu. He's like, oh, this is so frustrating. He goes, what number are we on? It's like, I think that was 79. He goes, seriously? So he was all frustrated. Akiyama shows up and he's like, again, trying to find things because again, we're trying to kill time. Bunpei's like meeting like the 2 or 3 people that recognized him. Of course, that was another one. I was like, come on, can you not? I guess they probably don't know Bunpei. It's just, it was so sad. Oh, there was a cute part with Bunpei. Again, I'm sorry if I'm going all over the place. But I had a photo of him, but it was with Kong. And so I printed it thinking at worst I can get Kong's signature, which is funny because I didn't get Kong's signature because the day was just crazy. So he spent the entire time waiting to go, and it ended up not happening until the following day. And by that point, I just lost track. It was difficult. So I had like the only good Bunpei photo, which was a recent one, which was that one. And so he looks at it and he's like, why do you have him next to this and that ugly mug next to him? And they've known each other for almost 20 years. So it's like, this is just like messing with each other. It's like, can I like scribble him out? In fact, I think it was Akiyama. It's like, it's okay, let me just scribble it out. It's okay. Which of course only friends can say that. And so, but he's like, is that the only photo you have of me? And I'm like, Bunpei, when was the last time you were actually out with anybody when you took a solo photo of the photo of yourself? And he goes, all right, fair point, I'm signing this one. So he was really sweet because he didn't have to, but he ended up signing, I don't know, 15 photos of that, 10 photos of that. And it was awesome because, again, the little group that I was in caused a stir only because, when someone doesn't recognize, like, for example, there were a lot of people that had no idea who they were. However, you look over to the side going, why is this group here? Like why is there like a buzz? And I had people that were like hovering around us like moons. Like they were always afraid to kind of walk into the circle and they didn't. And after a while, Nagano just got up and started walking towards people, and then they start. I think I lost like 3 pens because everybody wanted to use the Sharpies to sign things, but they were afraid to kind of walk into that circle. So I don't know if it was, I don't know, I guess because it was familial. So we were having just a normal conversation. You can tell, and you don't. So at least the people were nice that they weren't into. But at the same time, it's like, we kind of did that for like 3 or 4 hours. So kind of, I mean, the fans did get their signatures. Again, they were there for the entire day. So it's not like if they didn't have any other time to do so. And they were there for the whole duration. And the ones that were leaving did get their signatures and photos and stuff like that. So one of the rare opportunities, they're completely open the whole time that they're there. And they actually didn't hide this year. I think Takara hid for a little bit, but not too much. Yeah, not so much by comparison to last year. And I don't know if it was they had like more stress or whatever. It was, again, different vibe. This year, I think it was because, okay, this is the last opportunity I'm gonna have to have this, and then Takara has no idea if he's gonna be invited back. It's just the way of things. We don't know if he's. I don't think that they wouldn't, because he was never retired. Like, the only time that he'd said that he was retired, and he said it on camera, was 17, and that was a long time ago. And then, but even during the Sasuke Rising era, the 28, when they were forced to retire, he was the only one to say he wasn't going anywhere. He's like, he didn't want to go out in the dark mood like that, and then he ended up coming back. So I don't know. Shingo's hopeful. You know, he's gonna push really hard to just have the 2 brothers out there, him and Shingo and Takara, and you know, basically the last bastion of the All-Stars competing. But we'll see. You know, we'll see. I don't see why they won't, but you know, but he made it feel as if, like, if this is the last one, I'm going to reach out a bit more, because he's noticed that he's been the most detached out of all of them, because most of the time he would just hide. He says that he's not really much of a people person. I don't know what he's talking about, but that's always what he felt. And he never really knew what to say to people. And I guess that's a valid thing. I don't know. That's what it is. So yeah, so back to Akiyama showing me photos of his family, which was great. So thank you, Yubei, for translating that. So it was actually really cool. And again, I spent the entire day with Akiyama. I was so happy. So this is the point where I was saying that I was humbled by how well I was treated. I'm a nobody. I'm really a nobody. And so because I missed last year the final guys, like, everybody knew I was there for Nagano. I really, really wanted to see Nagano's run. And at that particular moment in time, we had no idea that we were not going to see Nagano's run that night. So I asked quietly, you know, am I allowed to at least be near the door so I can see it? Because I know there's probably not going to be enough space in the stands. So I ended up being allowed to go back in. Okay, this was part 2 of 3. Let me know if this is the type of things that you want to hear. And so until the next video, thanks. Take care.